Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday, and welcome back to another talk about how insulin resistance is affecting your health. So, I'm Misha. I love to talk about insulin resistance because I think most of us have not been told enough about it and what it's causing in our bodies and how it's contributing to the downfall of our health. So, insulin resistance is said to be the root of 95% of our health issues. And specialists have said that this is 95% of hypertensive issues, and that if we could get this under control, people's heart health would start to normalize. So, we're going to go over why this is happening. There's 5 different ways that I talk about, 5 different ways, not 10, that I talk about that insulin resistance is causing. Not directly, it doesn't go in and say, hey, blood pressure go up, but there's a number of things that happen along the way. The insulin resistance is changing in your body that's causing hypertension. So we're going to dive into that. And I want to dive in a little bit deeper on one piece this morning later, something that I really haven't talked about before. So hold on, we're going to talk about your heart and how insulin resistance is affecting it. Just so you know, one of the reasons this is my favorite talk is because I had hypertension of up to 180 over 150 every single day since my 30s. And I know I get people who say, oh, that's not true. You would have heart problems if that was true. Have I ever said that I didn't now have heart problems from long-term hypertension? No, I haven't. And behind the scenes, I struggle with that. And that's part of the reason why I get a number of things going on. But we're not here to talk about that. I am here to talk about the fact that I don't want others to go through that. And that's why this is my favorite talk. When I see people whose blood pressure is 130 over 100 or 130 over 80 or higher consistently, that's a sign of insulin resistance. So start off with that. If you're wondering, am I insulin resistant? And you have a blood pressure that's 130 over 80 and you haven't been told you have any kind of heart defect or anything like that, you're insulin resistant. And we're going to go over why I can say that now. Now, I get this information from doctors like Dr. Bickman and Dr. Fung and I don't think Dr. Hyman's talked about this one, but there's a number of other doctors out there who talk about blood pressure and insulin resistance. Okay. So first off, let's understand insulin resistance. And then, by the way, you guys, how many of you have what I would consider hypertension? So 130 over 80 or higher daily, or know somebody who's struggling with that. That's pretty terrifying. If you don't know, it's really terrifying. So again, please don't be the person who let it go, being like, oh, 130 over 80 is not that bad, and this is not a big thing, because it's an early warning sign that things are about to get worse. Cindy, thank you. Cinda, thank you. So it's funny. I had my stepmom. My stepmom's name was Cinda, but it was Sinda, Sinda. And so then my stepsister's name was Linda, Linda, and my daughter's name, because we combined a bunch of stuff, was Minda. So I've never seen it spelt like that, nor have I ever heard the name outside of my family before. So welcome in. Let's talk about your blood pressure. Okay. So let's dive in. Insulin resistance, if you guys don't understand that, we'll go more into depth with that later, but I just want to kind of give you a brief overview of it. So what's happening is our food is imperfect and we're just eating way too much of it. Crazy, right? Cinda. So when we have this, what our food is, and we've forgotten this, I really feel like we have forgotten that food is our fuel. We remember it when we're like, oh, I'm hungry, or oh, my blood sugar is dropping, or oh, I need some energy. We remember it then, but we don't look at it on a daily basis as this isn't just like a piece of jewelry we put on. It's not like a new pair of shoes and we need to have a bunch of them out there, which we don't need that either. But we don't need as much food as we're eating. Most of us do not have that kind of energy need, and food is just energy. So just remember, food is just energy. So when we're eating too much of it, we're creating too much energy in the system, and that energy is in the form of glucose. So when our food is converted into glucose, especially carbohydrates, our blood sugar then is spiking, and our blood can only handle in this whole body and all of these veins and vessels running around it can only handle about 1 teaspoon of sugar in our bloodstream at a time before it starts to become damaging. There's a number of things that happen with that, but we're going to talk about those later. So now your blood sugars are going up. So why does that matter? Well, when your blood sugars go up and your body senses this danger, it goes to the pancreas, which produces a number of hormones, but one is insulin. And so now it's saying, hey, pancreas, we need insulin. And why do we need insulin? Because insulin is carrying that energy to every cell in the body. Now, according to Dr. Ben Bickman, who studies fat cells in a petri dish every single day to see what the metabolic effects on humans are, says that he has not looked at a cell that doesn't have an insulin receptor on it, meaning every single cell that we know of needs insulin to get the energy to the cell. So not only does it transport it to the cell, it says, hey, cell, I have this key. I'm going to unlock the cell. I'm going to give you an energy delivery, and we're all good, okay? And normally that's fine and that works amazing. But when we have too much energy constantly, the cells start to, in effect, shut down to the cues of insulin. And there's a number of ways that happens. We can talk about that later. But your cells are now no longer responding to the cues from insulin to allow energy in. So now that becomes, so we have hyperglycemia, too much sugar, and then it goes hyperinsulinemia, meaning we have this it actually kind of inflammation from too much insulin. And then that too much insulin consistently becomes insulin resistance. Now, it doesn't stop there. So people will always be like, oh, I'm not diabetic. My blood sugars aren't high. This is not, and so this can't be me. Stop, hold on, wait a minute, because it's absolutely still can be you. So here's what happens. We get to not hypertension, we get to insulinemia and then insulin resistance. Now, if that's not taken care of at this point, it starts to become prediabetes and your blood sugars are starting to go up. It could take 10 to 20 years of this um, insulin resistant state before you actually see an increase in your blood sugars. And I'll explain why that happens in a second. Now, after prediabetes becomes diabetes, and then after diabetes, we start to have an array of health issues now that are very visibly clear. Obesity is one, but we end up with Alzheimer's, which is now being called type 3 diabetes. And then the other one is that now the pancreas has been put under so much stress for so long to produce such high amounts of insulin that it starts to shut down, and in some people turns into more of a type 1 diabetic type situation where the pancreas just doesn't produce insulin anymore. So if you don't catch it in the early stages and you just keep letting it go, there's a whole avalanche of things that can happen. Hypertension is one, but hypertension is also, like I said, this early warning cue. So now I'm going to finish with insulin resistance. I remembered I forgot something. So once we get to this state where we're gone from uh, insulin resistance to prediabetes to diabetes to type 3 or on diabetes, what's really happening is at some point your cells have said no more. So now that insulin has to transport that energy somewhere, and that somewhere is your storage units or your fat cells. So now insulin is directing, because it can't get the energy in anywhere else, it's directing that this energy is going into the fat cells to be used for later use, right? To be stored for later use. So when insulin is out, insulin is called an anabolic hormone, and that just means that it wants things to grow. So insulin, when it's out, is a primary hormone, and it regulates what every other hormone does. And if other hormones come in and say, hey, we're going to use some of that energy you have stored, insulin's like, no, you're not. And so it stops the breakdown of fats and it encourages the storage of more fats. Why is that important? Now, at some point, your fat cells start to become full. They don't just stretch and stretch and stretch and stretch and stretch and become so big that they're like a blimp size, like right from a regular balloon to a blimp. They get to a point where they're like, ooh, if I grow any more, I'm at risk of bursting or endangering myself. So they start to leak those sugars back out into the bloodstream, and then your blood sugars go up. So you could be insulin resistant for a number of years before your blood sugars ever go up and your doctor goes, "Oh, hey, you have a problem." So how do you know that it's insulin resistance if your doctor's just relying on a blood sugar test or an A1C test? Well, we're going to go over this heart issue, and I'll talk about some other ones in a minute. But hypertension is really one of my top 5 clues. If you have that 130 or over 80 or higher, just consider that you're insulin resistant and start to address it. And it's easy to address it. We'll go over why. Now, let's dive into why the heart is so related to insulin resistance and what's going on. And please ask questions if you have them. I'll do my best to answer. Before I get into this, I want to say I am not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist, just a real person like you guys who got really sick and regained my health by understanding insulin resistance and by utilizing a system that helps me keep my blood pressure and my diabetes under control. In fact, if you were to run my blood work today, they would not even know that I was diabetic, outside of maybe like some of the heart issues and stuff that I have. If a doctor was smart enough to put that together, yes, but just by blood work, they wouldn't know that. My labs are all in normal range. My blood sugars, my A1C is down to like 5.3 from 7.4. Anything above 5.6, 5.7, you're pre-diabetic. And then I think like above 6.3, you're diabetic. So that's important. Now, when insulin resistance happens, remember, the cells are becoming resistant to insulin, but that's not the only thing that happens. This insulin resistance, some people don't like it, just like they never liked the term adrenal fatigue, right? Oh, your adrenals don't get fatigued. Well, it's a topic for another day, but insulin resistance doesn't just mean that every cell is resistant to the insulin. It means that there's a lot of cells that are resistant to that energy, so we're having problems in a number of ways, and we're going to go over some. Some cells are going to start taking up the excess insulin, going like, "Oh, hey, party, we want all the excess, right? We want to take what we can." That's going to affect your heart, and I'm going to explain how. Some cells just stay course, right? So insulin resistance is a variety of things, from that midline where we should be sensitive to insulin and it should be delivering energy to our cells. Now we're becoming, some cells don't want it anymore. Some cells are taking up too much, and then some cells are just acting normally. Now, with the heart, 5 ways that insulin resistance is causing hypertension or high blood pressure. The number one way that I talk about is a dysfunction in your endothelial cells. The endothelial cells, that's just a big word for the innermost lining of your blood vessels. Okay. So there's layers to your blood vessels, kind of like the layers to an onion. But the inner layer of that blood vessel is called the endothelium. Just so we're clear, that's all that is. It's just that innermost layer. But what's happening with insulin resistance, remember, some cells are taking up too much. The endothelial cells are some of those cells, and they're like, "Ooh, yummy. Let's take in the excess insulin." So those endothelial cells start to thicken and grow. So if we take a look at, say, we're trying to pass water and we have a fire hose and we're passing water through that fire hose. And now all of a sudden, the fire hose only becomes the size of a garden hose, but we're still trying to put that water through that smaller hose that should have been going through the bigger hose. That's kind of what's happening when our endothelial cells thicken. So on the inner layer of the cells, they maybe are normally like this. Now that inner layer is thickening, and so that space inside is narrowing down and becoming smaller and smaller. So same amount of volume trying to go through a much smaller space, of course, pressure is going to go up. So that's one way. Another way tied to that very thing is that those endothelial cells start to become dysfunctional when there's just too many of them and they're too thick. And they produce a substance inside your blood called nitric oxide. And what that happens is it starts to allow those blood vessels to expand and relax so that that pressure can go through. But when the endothelial cells are in an insulin resistant state, you would think, okay, they just took on too much. How can you say they're resistant? Well, now that those endothelial cells, for in effect, are overfed, they cannot produce. They're dysfunctioning. There's just too much. It's just like this tight fit, and they just cannot produce the nitric oxide that allows those blood vessels to relax and open back up. So now they're thicker and the space is smaller and it just can't open up. And that all relates to the endothelial cells and how insulin resistance is causing dysfunction in them. That alone would explain a number of us why we have hypertension. I test my blood pressure every single day because I never want to go back to where I was. And it's right around, it's been a little high lately at like 120 over 74 because I've been doing a lot more and just life has changed. But generally, it's about 114 over 70, 112 over 70. And I'm not on any medications because medications never got my blood pressure down. But that alone, those two things with the endothelial cells, your blood vessels being much smaller inside because they're so thick, and then not being able to produce this component that allows them to relax, that would explain a big part of it, right? But there's more. So when we look at that, we have to understand that insulin resistance, and I talk about it on a number of different other talks, but insulin resistance is bidirectional with so many other things in the body, and cortisol is one of them. I check my blood pressure throughout the day. I check it first thing when I get up, Ro. I check it after my live. I usually check it before bed, or if I've been doing anything that's highly stressful, I'll check my blood pressure just to make sure that even though like I've done this physical activity, or like yesterday I was painting my son's house all day, had a lot of pain going on, I check my blood pressure to make sure that it's not spiking above that 130 over 80. So I check it multiple times. That's why I wear the watch. Now I do have, I crack myself up. You guys, if I don't make anybody else laugh, I make me laugh. But I have a stethoscope and I know how to use it. Ro knows how to use hers too. So I've been able to check this watch with my blood pressure. And is it 100% accurate? No, but it's very, very close. When I've worn it and they're doing my blood pressure at a doctor's office, I'll tell them, wait a second, I'll run this, and then they'll give me my blood pressure, and they're very close. So I use my watch so I don't have to have a cuff running around with me all day. But that's why I wear the watch. So back to endothelium, we were talking about, not endothelium, hypertension, we were talking about cortisol. So cortisol is another hormone that our body releases, and it has a lot to do with our metabolism because cortisol is basically the fight or flight hormone in our body, telling us, when there's danger around, that we need our heart pumping faster, we need more blood volume because we need to be ready to move, to motivate, right? And this came from times when, like, say, we'll go back and say saber-toothed tigers, like you're walking along picking berries and all of a sudden you hear what sounds like could be a predatory animal, your cortisol level goes up and you're like, I got to be ready because there's danger here. But insulin resistance is increasing, or the excess insulin is increasing that cortisol slightly all the time. So increased insulin means increased cortisol. Interesting thing is increased cortisol can increase insulin need as well. Why does it matter to your heart? Well, of course, because now we have endothelial cells that have thickened up and that space is smaller and they can't relax and open up. And yet we have insulin helping us produce more cortisol than we need. So our heart is racing, going a little faster because it's ready for danger that's just not there. And that's putting even more pressure in the blood vessels, and your pressure is going up. Is it a lot? No. But even that slight increase in cortisol can exacerbate this problem. So that's important to understand that. Betting you have cortisol. So most people with high insulin levels also have high cortisol levels. We'll go over a number of ways you guys can help both your insulin resistance, your cortisol, your blood pressure, all of that, without adding anything to your day, without buying anything. And then I'm going to show you the protocol that I used that helped me. This is the only thing that got my blood pressure under control. So we're going to go over that. So endothelial cells thickened. They can't produce nitric oxide, and your cortisol level is rising. So let's talk a little bit more about cortisol before I move on, because when we have these high levels of cortisol, it's actually dumping more sugar into the bloodstream as well. So if you're thinking, well, my blood sugars just aren't under control, or maybe you've been out working or up late and all of a sudden your blood sugars are a little high in the morning, it's a cortisol effect. Cortisol is telling your body to produce more, to pull more sugars out of its storage units because it's perceiving that you need energy. So, one of those times is in the morning, and the dawn effect with cortisol is very prevalent. So, some people's cortisol rises a lot higher, and when that's what wakes you up in the morning, your body goes, "Oh, hey, it's about that 6:30 time when she usually gets up. We need to get ready." So your body starts to produce cortisol. You wake up, you get ready for the day, but your blood sugars are a little bit elevated right after you wake up because cortisol is doing its job. Okay, but in your heart, too much cortisol is starting to cause damage. It's like cleaning something, and you just keep cleaning it and cleaning it and cleaning it even when it doesn't need to be cleaned. It's going to wear out, it's going to wear a thin spot in it, it's just going to break down. So we don't need cortisol all the time, and yet with insulin resistance, we're having this slight spike of cortisol. W so there was one other thing. Oh, yes, your kidneys. How could I forget your kidneys? In these 5 ways, how can I forget your kidneys? So, your kidneys in this whole process, your kidneys are filtration devices. And what they're doing is they're filtering a number of things through out of your system and deciding what your body needs to keep and what it needs to get rid of. And that can be proteins, but it also relates to salts. So those of you who have hypertension, has your doctor told you to limit your salt intake because that's going to cause hypertension to go up? So what they're saying is they're taking the end effect, right? So instead of saying, gee, maybe your blood sugars are too high. Maybe you're getting in too many carbohydrates, and that's causing this whole avalanche of things that's causing you to have some salt retention. I'll explain why. They just say salt. They just say salt. Cut the salt. I never, ever, 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 ever worry about salt. I was watching an amazing doctor who said that, uh when you're salting your food right, that salt, if you put too much on, have any of you guys ever over salted your food and it's like really bitter and you just can't even eat it because it just is so nasty? That's what your body will tell you when it's too much salt. Pause, work with your doctor. I am not a doctor, okay? I'm sharing some information. Pause, work with your cardiologist if you're having heart problems, but bring them some of this information and talk to them about it, okay? So, why? Your kidneys are filtering salt and deciding how much to retain and how much to get rid of. That's done through this process utilizing another hormone called aldosterone. Your kidneys produce this aldosterone, and it helps us regulate that salt and water in our body. Salt primarily, but when we start to retain salt in our blood, then that requires water. So now you have increased the volume of your blood because it's holding on to more water. You're also seeing some inflammation maybe in your joints or your feet and your hands, and you just have this like puffiness about you. That's an aldosterone dysfunction in your kidneys because they're overloaded by insulin. Insulin is starting this whole process of the aldosterone and the salt retention and the water retention. So now we have cells that are thickened, can't open up, heart that's pushing more water or more volume through, and yet we're increasing the volume even more because our kidneys are not doing their filtration right because they've been impaired by insulin and the production of this aldosterone. I'll get into some other information about that in a minute. So that's 4 of the ways. Now, the last way, the insulin resistance is causing your, not the last way, but the last of the 5 ways I talk about, um, is causing your high blood pressure. And if you want to know, besides my blood pressure is high, I'm probably insulin resistant, I'm about to give you a calculation. So get your pen and paper out and write this down. You guys, insulin resistance is about our food intake. It's not about a lack of medication or a lack of medical attention. It's It's that we've been bamboozled, we've been lied to, we've been sold crappy food, and we're eating way more often and way more than we should, and that's the root cause. So if we understand all of this, we can start to address it more naturally and normally. Now, why that? If you get your annual labs done, which everybody should, I want you to go down, find your labs when this live is done, and go down to the lipid part where it has your cholesterol and your triglycerides and your LDL and your HDL and all of that stuff, right? There's two numbers in that part of the panel that I want you to pay attention to. And that's going to be the number by your triglycerides and the number by your HDL, high density lipids. I was going to say lipoprotein, lipids. So take those two numbers. You're going to divide the triglyceride by the HDL number. Okay, so say your triglycerides are 150 and your HDL is 50. That's going to give you a number of 3, right? What you're looking for is a number below 1.5. Now, some new information has come out, and we're going to go over a little bit about the new recommendations that are starting to be talked about. But both the NIH and Dr. Ben Bickman talk about that resulting number should be 1.5 or less. If you can divide your triglycerides by your HDL and it's less than 1.5, you are likely okay. If it's climbing above 1.5 to say zero point 0.2, then you probably have a problem and need to start addressing your dietary intake sooner than later. If it's 3 or above, let's address it because you really have a problem. And I've heard people come back and tell me their numbers were above 5, and that's crazy to me. What kind of ratio is that for them to have to be? It would have to be like, say the HDL stayed the same at 50, their triglycerides would have to be like at 250 for them to have that high of a number. And yet I know it happens because I've seen the blood work from people when I worked in a doctor's office. Now, that's a pretty interesting calculation, but why? That calculation is telling you your risk for heart disease. It's also telling you how insulin resistant you are. It's telling you that because we're going to talk about LDL. But we didn't even do LDL in the calculation, right? We didn't. LDL has a number of different forms of LDL. We're going to talk about type A and type B. Type A is a big, buoyant type of low density lipid. So it just kind of goes along the bloodstream, and you would think that that would cause problems, but it doesn't. It's kind of buoyant. So if you think about dropping a beach ball in a river, you can watch that beach ball just kind of bounce around on the top of the river and go on down the way, right? And it's just going to keep going. But if you dropped a golf ball, which is like type B LDL, they're dense and they're small, and they're meant to stick to the walls of the inner walls of your blood vessels because they're meant to clog up holes and damage that's been done inside your blood vessels. So doing a really important job. But there needs to be a balance of the two. With insulin resistance, that balance starts to fall out of order. And this calculation is the only way right now that they can tell what that balance is of the LDL A versus the LDL B. So the higher that number, the more LDL B you have in your system. So now you have more golf balls that are falling to the bottom in the walls of your riverbed or your blood vessels, and instead of just clogging up the holes and we're doing a good job, now there's just too much, and so they're starting to build up, and now you're starting to have blockages in your blood vessels that can turn into plaques and cause arterial damage and a lot of different heart problems. So that calculation is really important, not just in understanding how insulin resistant you are, but understand that those other things go along with that calculation as well. So that calculation, if you're at 2 or higher, you're putting your heart at risk, not just your entire health, but yes, your entire health through insulin resistance and how your heart is able to function in the face of this excess LDL type B. Does that make sense to anybody before I go on? Does everybody get that? Understand what I'm trying to get across here? So I caution people a lot that When you're eating healthy dietary fats, when you're eating healthy cholesterol, that's not carbohydrates. That's really not contributing to this cholesterol issue that we're talking about. Like egg yolks, are they causing a cholesterol problem for you? No, they're not. They're not causing that cholesterol buildup. You know what is? Trans fats, seed oils, highly processed vegetable oils, things like sugar. Those are the things that are queuing up the insulin resistance and causing this cholesterol problem. So because you have a cholesterol problem, does it mean that you can't have avocados or egg yolks? No, you should be having those. Those are giving you good forms of cholesterol in your system, and you need cholesterol. Your body needs it, but it needs a healthy type, and that means that LDLB has to be balanced, as well as a whole range of other things. But it's not the fat, the healthy fat that's at the root of cholesterol issues, and that leads into the liver and kidney and gallbladder and other heart issues. It's really the sugars and those trans fats that are causing the problem. So one of the biggest things, here's your first clue, two of the biggest things you can do for your health, whether it's insulin resistance or your heart, get rid of trans fats. Get rid of those seed oils and those I just talked recently about how inflammatory seed oils are and why. There's a whole process that they go through, and it makes them very toxic to us. They cause oxidative stress in our system. That inflammation increases insulin resistance. That insulin resistance then is increasing cortisol and endothelial thickening and all that stuff. So downstream from those unhealthy oils causing inflammation in the system, it's causing more and more problems. Get rid of the seed oils, get rid of the trans fats. And guys, this is where it becomes crazy. We don't want to have to. I don't want to. I say that daily with some things. I just don't want to. But we have to look at box labels. If you're going to eat a boxed food or a packaged food, you got to start looking at the label, see what oils are in it, and see how much added sugar is in it. They get flavor from adding sugar because they're selling you on the fact that fat is bad for you. And we're going to talk about that as well. The best foods you can eat are going to be raw and organic foods, or whole foods. So does that cut out steak and chicken? No, it does not. It does not mean that you have to be vegan at all. But maybe instead of that McDonald's hamburger that's ground up meat source with a lot of flavoring in it. By the way, both of my kids worked at McDonald's. They have a special seasoning they add to their burgers to make them taste like burgers because the meat's so deficient. So instead of that, maybe get some, it doesn't have to be grass fed, but just get some ground beef at the store and have, your hamburger that way. But stop getting all the packaged processed foods. The other thing, and it's not just McDonald's, but Burger King and Chick-fil-A and all of those guys fry their foods, cook their foods in seed oils, and they're highly inflammatory. Now, if you would have told me that 3 years ago, I would have said, baloney, I don't buy that. But now that I've cleaned up my diet and that now that my health has gotten better, I can immediately tell if I've gone out someplace and they've used seed oils. Seed oils can go rancid really quickly, and that's a whole other talk. But get rid of the seed oils, get rid of the sugar. That will help your heart. Okay. Easier said than done for most of us. I'm going to give you some things that can help you with that as well. Now, we talked about cortisol. Some things that you can do for cortisol, you guys, and I'm becoming more and more hardline on this as I age. I'm stubborn anyway, but here we go. We've got to start unplugging from our electronics. And this means me too. I'm not saying I'm perfect. When I say these things, I'm talking to me as well. But like sitting down and scrolling through stuff at night is cueing our brain to stay awake. It's keeping us awake, and it's keeping cortisol levels high. When you're not getting in the proper amounts of sleep, your cortisol levels are going to rise, and it's going to cause more of the insulin resistance problem because, again, cortisol and insulin are very bidirectional. One goes up, the other goes up. One goes down, the other starts to come down as well. Cortisol, get your rest. Unplug. Stop watching negative news all the time. Start filling your heart with gratitude and the things in your life that are amazing. Your cortisol levels will amazingly start to drop. You'll have less anxiety and depression and fatigue and all of that stuff going on as well. Now, what I do, you guys, every single morning, you've been seeing me drink. This is actually this tea and matcha because I love matcha mixed together. But my morning tea is generally this, just this tea. Why this? And why have I been so in love with this since I started it? It gives me energy, it gives me mental clarity, and it's helping those endothelial cells through reducing insulin resistance and delivering chlorogenic acids, which have to pass through the blood-brain barrier, which is your endothelial cells. This is changing my health. Now, while it gives me a lot of energy, this does not hurt my heart. My beautiful, amazing, lovely, I adore her, my daughter-in-law feels like she needs energy a lot. So she's always drinking Red Bulls. And she knows about the system, she has it, but she's not consistent with it. You can only do so much. This weekend, she tells me, "You know what, Mom? I was starting to have some really bad issues and I just don't feel as well as I should. So I stopped drinking the Red Bull and I'm drinking this more." And she said, "I'm starting to feel better. I don't know why we all get resistant, but it really does work." So, whereas Red Bulls and Bang Energies and excessive amounts of coffee, I couldn't do because my blood pressure was so high. And you guys, I was scared when I started drinking this. My blood pressure was so high. Remember, 180 over 150 or higher. What I didn't say yet is that every week there would be a couple of nights a week where I would wake up and my blood pressure, because remember, I got a stethoscope and I do know how to use it. It would be like 220, 240 over 160, sometimes a little higher than that on the diastolic. I was literally afraid that I was going to have a heart attack. My heart was going to burst or something in the middle of the night. Single grandma, you know, kids love me, but they don't call me every day. I didn't want them to find that. And I was terrified. And I cried every time I would wake up in the night. My heart's racing, my blood pressure's up. I'm terrified. Yes, I went to the emergency room. I went to the emergency room many times. I remember the first time I went in, at that point, my blood pressure was only like 180 over 150. And the nurse was like, "There's no way. There's no way you're walking in here and your blood pressure is like that." She did my blood pressure 3 times, and then boom, I was in a wheelchair being carted back to observation, and they started running tests because my blood pressure was that high. And that started a journey of me being on multiple medications to try and get my blood pressure down, which none of them were able to do. One of my doctors was a personal friend, and she was terrified, just like I was, that she was gonna get the news one day that my heart just, in effect, blew up. And so she was doing all kinds of research and trying to figure out how to help me with this heart issue. The sad truth is, you guys, the sad truth is most doctors are not taught this in school. More and more doctors are coming forward and saying, "Hey, in all the studies we did, in all the things we had to learn, we never learned about insulin resistance and we never learned about nutrition." Nutrition courses are offered to doctors, but only about 20% of them take even one nutrition course. So they're being educated to look at on a cellular level or look at what medication can fix it, but they're not being told, "Hey, do you know that 95% of our disorders today are lifestyle related, meaning what we put in our face and how often we do?" And if they understood that, your health would start to get better. But they're not taught that, you guys. So I'm not here to bastardize doctors. They're doing the best they can. I want you to know that most medical professionals are doing the best they can with the information they've been given. And when you think about this body and all the cells and the blood vessels and the tissues and all of the, like you not only have a vascular system, you have a lymphatic system, and it gets affected too. There's a lot for them to know. I don't think any one of us could hold ourselves up to the standards that we hold most of our doctors to. So here's the caveat. With that being said, we have to stop being the type of people who are like, "Oh, I have a problem. Somebody save me." Somebody give me the answer because I'm just going to go sit in the corner and wait. No, take control of your life. Start to help your doctor. Start to help them see what could be going on with you. Start to address some of the health issues on your own so they're not overwhelmed with it. Look, I went into the doctors and had so many issues, joints failing, gastrointestinal distress. My heart was failing. I had skin tags. I had teeth and gums that were bleeding. My eyesight was failing. My hair was falling out. All of this stuff. And so you take this list in and you go to your doctor and you're like, hey, doc, all of this is wrong. You have two possible outcomes. The doctor's going to be like, oh my gosh. But they're looking at each one of those things instead of going, hey, this is a one big picture. If we put all of these symptoms together, there's one thing that can address that. They don't see that. They see the little pieces. And so they're running off dealing with the hypertension and what's doing what pill can we give her for that? And then her liver's failing. What can we do to help her liver? Or her eyesight's failing. What kind of drug are we going to give her for that? Or her adrenals are not working properly. What kind of drug are we going to give? And none of those drugs are we deficient in, and none of them are really curing the problem. The other answer you could get is it's all in your head. So I'm going to pause for a second. How many of you guys have ever gone to the doctor with a list like I had, and you talk to them and you show them everything that's going on, and you either get the feeling that they think that you're just a hypochondriac, that it's all in your head, or that they outright tell you that there's nothing wrong with you, or just lose some weight and you'll feel better. That's my favorite one, right? It's all about, like, even if I look online, I have to be very careful when I'm reading research papers or summaries of research papers. They'll always be like, oh yeah, obesity is linked to this. Obesity is linked to that. Obesity, obesity, obesity. If people would just lose weight, they would get better. You always ask your doctor what's the root cause, and are you going to use or medicine, right? Cure medicine. And medicines are not most medicines. I'm not going to say all medicines because, like, when I always say this, when we talk about infections, some of those medications that are helping our body fight off an infection that could cause us to become septic and die, yeah, honey, we need those. But when we're talking about something that is just because we're putting the wrong things in our face and we're putting them in our face too often and it's affecting everything from our mouth to our butt and leaching out everywhere else, we have a problem that medication isn't going to fix. Um, Oregano oil is amazing for a number of things, Bonita, and I actually have doTERRA oils. I don't use them as much as I should, but I do like oregano oil. You guys, the thing, so I want to stop and say this too. Not going to bash doTERRA because I love them. But my mom used to do doTERRA, and she was always wanting me to be a rep for doTERRA. And although I love them, I found that it was really hard because most people don't understand it. And then there's so many oils that you almost have to have a doctorate just to understand what oil to use when. The amazing thing for me with this protocol is that it's just two real food products, and they're addressing 95% of my health issues, and that's it. That's the if there's one thing that I do in the day without fail, it's my system because I know it's keeping my insulin resistance under control, and that is helping keep the rest of my health better. Do I do other things? Like, do I use castor oil? Not as often as I should, but yes, I do. I have a red light bed. I do the other things because I damaged my health so much that at 60, I feel like my dad. Is there something about um, you shouldn't use castor oil in your eyes, but if you use it in the areas around, it can help. But yeah, I wouldn't put castor oil in your eyes. I don't think that Bonita is saying that at all. But Ro, look it up because I've heard that before. I have not done that for cataracts. I've used castor oil on my scalp. I've used it on my skin. I've used it on injuries. I've used it over my heart. I've used it over my liver. Castor oil will actually, like most of us, if we have insulin resistance, we have a liver problem. So those things are all, you put castor oil in your eyes, Bonita? Like in your actual eye. So I'm going to be careful there. I think Ro and I would both agree. Your eyes are very delicate. I would have to do a lot of research before I could say, yeah, I would put castor oil in my eyes. Your cataracts are getting better. That's great, but I am not going to tell people. You guys, I am not going to tell people to put stuff in their eyes. Your eyes are very delicate, and there's a lot that can go wrong with putting things in your eye. I'm glad that you're getting results from that. And yeah, Ro, let me know what you find because I don't have time today to look it up, but I would be careful with that. Castor oil is amazing. But all right, so let's get back to the insulin resistance part. Yeah. So what I do now is this tea that you see me drinking. It comes in lemon or lemon ginger, different packaging, and then a pre-meal drink. Now the tea, we did a whole talk on that on Friday. You want more information about that? Please go back to like YouTube, Facebook. Those replays are all stored there, and you'll hear about all of these amazing things that chlorogenic acids and this yerba mate tea, not just yerba mate, but components in it, are doing for your body. The tea is yerba mate, but it's highly concentrated and extracted. And I hear a lot of people talk about it, and I feel like they just get it a little bit wrong. So we hand pick it. We hand pick it because those farmers know exactly when it's ripe. Look, this is a crop they've been growing for thousands of years. They know it better than anyone. We do not harvest it from people who are just going out taking machines and grabbing everything. When you do that, you're getting leaves that are dead. You're getting leaves that are too green. You're getting some that's good, but you're getting a lot of stuff that you don't need. And then all of that gets packaged into this little baggie that you're steeping for tea, root stems, everything kind of ground up in there. Now, with us, they hand pick it. The farmers, they own their own farms. They hand pick it, they give it to us. Then we test it to make sure that it's actually yerba mate, 3-point testing system. Then we fire roast it because the components, not just chlorogenic acids, theobromine, mate saponins, any of that, but there are the nutritional components inside the food. Fire roasting helps release them from the bulk. Now, I'm going to stop because I think that a lot of people don't understand this is very common with most of our foods. Some foods should just be eaten raw, right? I get that. Some foods need to be cooked for the components in it, the nutritional components, to be as bioavailable as possible. So, like spinach, everybody loves spinach for iron, but you're really not getting the bioavailability or the breakdown of that iron that you can use if it's not first cooked. That's similar to the tea. So now it's fire roasted. We extract the components, the nutritional components, not just one or two. We're not going in there, oop, we want the chlorogenic acids, oop, we want the theobromine. We're taking the nutritionals out of the bulk that you're not needing, and then we concentrate it. Then we take it to a process called Hyperpure in Switzerland that's removing pesticides and carcinogens and all of that. So now you have a highly concentrated extract of a real food that's really, really pure. And what happens is with this, Dr. Huberman has talked about chlorogenic acids, and you're starting to see more and more and more doctors talk about chlorogenic acids. That process increases the chlorogenic acids in this because it's so concentrated by 375 times over a normal bagged tea. That's huge. So when Dr. Huberman talks about he loves yerba mate, and yerba mate, because of the chlorogenic acids in it, helps increase your GLP-1 or glucagon like peptide 1, which is helping people with weight loss and satiety. And he says this does it minimally. He's talking about yerba mate. Now we have a product that increases those effects that Huberman talked about by 375 times because we're getting a good amount of this into the system. Now, when this goes in, it has antioxidant, anti-inflammatory effects. It gives me mental clarity and energy. It gives me physical energy. And I was talking to my daughter-in-law last night, and I said, "Hon, what do you think? What's the, because she's younger than me, right? So different reality. I'm like, what's the one thing that you would think of as a complaint?" And this is what she said is fatigue. And that was interesting to me. So this tea alone, and I have 2 of them a day, helps with the fatigue without giving me crashes and jitters because it's not, although it has the same amount of coffee or similar to that of 1 cup of caffeine as 1 cup of coffee, all of these components in it called adaptogens, the chlorogenic acids, theobromine, mate, saponins. You don't need to remember all of those. Those help mediate the caffeine. So you're getting the energy from it. You're actually getting the delivery of energy into your brain, which is one of the places why you're not feeling energy. It's not just, oh my gosh, my body is tired. I did too much. I'm fatigued. Our brains are fatigued because they're not getting the nutrition that they need. So we need to make sure we're getting nutrition in. Castor oil is in a lot of eye drops. Okay. Yeah, I want to go look at that now. Castor oil. I know castor oil does a lot, but okay. So again, the tea. I have it in the morning. Helps me wake up, get my energy, my mental clarity for the day. Antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer effects. It can actually help increase endurance and stamina during exercise by 10 to 15%. This one always frustrates me. Damn it all. If when I was, because I was a world champion powerlifter, I had to give it up because of my joints. Had I known about this during the time that I was competing, and I look at it and I like my maximum lifts, if I was able to add 10% to those, I already had set world records. They've all been broken. But um, those records might still be standing today had I had a 10 to 15% increase of physical performance. Now we have another powerlifter who's actually a scientist and he's on the team that helped develop this. And he uses this before competitions instead of like Red Bulls and all of that stuff. This is my pre, intra, and post workout now because it's building my heart health. It's giving me the energy without causing all the damage. And it's giving me a power pack of vitamins and minerals and all of that as well. So this tea has really changed my life. And people will say I've had many conversations and people are like, but what about kids? Is it safe around kids? Can kids drink it? Can kids? My granddaughter, who's now 6, from the time she was like 3 and 4, when I would walk around with a mug that was a little bit bigger than this, I remember taking them to the park. And if I wasn't paying attention to my mug, maybe I was on a live stream or maybe I was on a call and they were playing. I would go to pick up my mug and it would be empty. That little 3, 4-year-old would drink the entire tea. Now, would I get frustrated? Yeah, because I want my tea. Did I really care? No, because I knew she just got really good nutrition into her body, and she's a very picky little eater. So I don't have to worry about it. 3 of my grandkids drink the tea, and it's helping actually, you guys, it does help with ADHD. Symptoms are very much managed for me, for Steffi, for my grandson, for a number of other people that I know that have ADHD. Where can you get this drink? Are there supplements that work? Desperately seeking relief. So the drink you're just going to get in my profile link. Let's take a look. If you go up to my profile, right under the red lights, there's a link there. And that will take you both to my website. There's one page on my website. I try to simplify it because I realize I give too much information sometimes. But there's a page, if you go to the tab that says Feel Great, and it just tells more about the system, and you can order it all right there. So it's the tea in the morning, a tea in the afternoon, and a pre-meal drink before I eat my biggest meal of carbohydrates. I am such a nut about fiber. I have a couple of these a day. Sometimes you guys have seen me. Luckily today I'm not having that horrible nausea from my heart. But normally I have this because it helps with that nausea. By the way, sometimes for me, I want to talk about this. When you have nausea or upset stomach, you guys be careful, especially if you have high blood pressure. That's one of the signs that your heart is really starting to struggle. If you're having swelling and you're having this weird nausea or kind of pain in your stomach all the time, be careful with that. Get checked. Okay. Now I drink this, and this is how easy this whole system is. I will be traveling. I leave out on an airplane to go to the West Coast on Sunday. So you know that a minimum of, I'll probably have a double down of this in my bag that I walk on the plane with. I'll have an entire 10-day supply. I usually times it by 1.5 when I travel just to make sure I'm covered. Will go in my suitcase. It never stops me at the airport. I never get flagged for anything like this. I can carry on a bottle. I can go fill it up with water, mix up my protocol and drink it right in the airport and move on with my day. I don't have to worry about bagging, boxing, steeping anything, or trying to measure this out. This is it. Pour it in, pour this in. Let's not drop it today. I don't know why I've been dropping it. That's it. That's my pre-meal drink. And this is as simple as it goes. Now I'm going to drink this down. What's going to happen with this part of the system? Those fibers in there are going to go to work. They're going to start to feed my good gut bacteria. And when that happens, we're creating short chain fatty acids. When the bacteria in your gut that are healthy start to feed on that, it creates these short chain fatty acids. Those are starting to cue your body to crave less sugar and utilize fat more for burning for fuel. It's helping me because now it goes into my gut and it gels up. If we look at this bottle and see how thick this is already starting to get, this doesn't do that. For me, I love the fiber, not just as a dietary prophylactic, but like I don't have Tums or any of that in my house anymore. If I have those days where my tummy is upset, I just have one of these and it starts to soothe it down. It's coating my stomach and it's giving my stomach health instead of just giving it a Band-Aid fix. So the system is a tea in the morning, a tea in the afternoon when your cravings are coming back, when your energy is low, and then a pre-meal drink before the meal with the biggest amount of carbohydrates in it. I'm going to talk about that more tomorrow because I think I'm going to do fiber tomorrow. But that's all I've done. So it reversed my hypertension, got me off of 13 different medications, helped me lose 50 pounds, got my eyesight back, my mental clarity back, got skin tags off my body. That's it. 2 drinks, 3 points during the day. That's what changed my health when nothing else did. You guys, if I didn't love this so much, I wouldn't be here talking about it, right? If I didn't love this so much, I might have never learned about insulin resistance. So on the backside, and I don't know how many of you guys feel like this, but I walk through my house and now like, okay, so now I'm dealing with the effects of my heart, vulnerability. Ugh, I don't like talking about this stuff, but I'm working to get my son's house ready to sell. He's deployed. He's going to be gone for about another month. When he gets back, he hits the ground running. He's going to be moving. So I'm helping get his peace, love, sun, smile. I'm trying to help get their house repainted and all the upgrades done so that when he comes home, he doesn't have so much to worry about. It's a mama's job, right? It's what we mamas do. And I'm doing this on live because my kids never watch my lives. But he doesn't know that I've been suffering with heart issues. And several times when I was painting, I had to sit down, not because I was fatigued, not because, well, there was fatigue there, because I started having this really bad feeling of nausea, this really odd pain that I can't even explain in my gut. Yes, there was some fatigue. Yes, there was some other things. And I knew that at that point, my heart was having a problem. Now, the system, where I'm going with this is I get a little bit, it's like the devil and the angel on your shoulder. At one point, I get a little bit pissed off because I'm like, our if our medical system was not so controlled by big pharma, and that's where their teachings come from, and that's what they are learning. If any one of them had caught that, hey, this is something called insulin resistance, and we can address it and hopefully help all of her issues, I might not have had that hypertension for so long that damaged my heart. I might not have had to go through all of that. So I get a little bit pissed off that nobody told me any of this before. Part of why I'm here talking to you guys about it, right? I don't want you going through that. The second phase of that is for me daily. That the first thing is I get a little bit pissed off, but then I'm like, but thank God that 3 years ago I found this system. Because had I not found the system, those fears I had of my heart giving out, or what I call exploding, or any of that would have probably been a reality for me now. I'm here with my grandkids and still able to go do all the stuff I do at 60 because 3 years ago, I found the system that I attribute to saving my life, and I don't wanna cry, but I don't really care anymore when people sorry, I have this thing that I don't care anymore when they come at me and say, "Oh, you're just a Unicity shill, or you're just this and that." No, I'm helping people because I really, honestly, 100% believe that this is what saved my life, and my doctor even calls me. She's on the, West Coast, I'm on the East Coast now, and she's like, "I cannot believe how much your life has turned around, how much your health has turned around." She's watched my lives, she's watched my information, she's actually called and texted me and said, "Thank you for getting this information out." So although I'm not a doctor, the people who actually care about your health are very thankful that we're delivering this information out. So have I seen this work for type 1 diabetics? Yes, yes. Um, so type 1 diabetics, let's talk about that. But there's one up here. For some reason, the comment got hidden and Love Shanetta said ACV. ACV can work. I because of all the gut issues I've had and me being Native American, I blame it a lot on that. Um, ACV works, but I have to be very careful with it. And so I would rather do something that I know is going to reduce my blood sugar spike, reduce my insulin spike in effect, and not in effect, scientifically proven. Let's stop because I misspoke there. This product has been proven to reduce a blood sugar spike by 20% when taken 10 minutes before a meal. But it also reduces an insulin spike by 13%. I'm not aware of studies like that on ACV. Plus, it's building, yes, ACV can build gut health and all that, but this is feeding my probiotics, allowing a lot of other things to happen, reducing inflammation, um, and it's delivering vitamins and minerals. So it's a one shot for me that I don't even have to think about. I mix it up in a bottle like that and I'm done. In an airport, I would mix it up just like that, rinse the bottle out, and then fill it up with water and put my tea in it. That's how it goes for me. Actually, I have some of these stainless steel mugs that I like because it keeps them colder that I carry through the airport and fill up that way too. But the fiber is great. Now, back to type 1 diabetics. So let's talk about that. Type 2 versus type 1. Type 1, their pancreas just is not producing insulin. And so they have nothing that's helping regulate that sugar. So they have to have exogenous or insulin that doesn't come from inside their body injected or put in a pump so that they're responding to the blood sugar levels when they need to, which is what our bodies are doing. And a type 2 diabetic, we're just overwhelmed by the insulin and it's a problem. But based on our food, spiking our sugar and the need for insulin. So in a type 2 diabetic, we're producing that insulin. In a type 1 diabetic, the need is still there, but they can't produce it, so they have to take insulin. So yes, we have a number of type 1 diabetics. In fact, we have a young man that is type 1 diabetic, was able to lose over 30 pounds, get off of his fast acting insulin and reduce the long acting insulin, I think by like 40%. Um, Lost weight, gained his mental clarity back. He was, I think, 9 or 10 when he started the system, and he does both of these things. I did a video with him when I first started, and he said it was the easiest thing he's ever done, and it managed his type 1 diabetes. But we have adults, like I have a family member who's type 1 diabetic, uses the system to help manage his blood sugars and has seen a reduction in his use of insulin. We can talk about insulin a little bit. Insulin is absolutely life-saving for type 1 diabetics, but the same thing is happening to you. Too much insulin too often, whether it's coming from your pancreas or whether you're injecting it or pumping it, too much is too much, and your cells respond the same way. Okay, so it doesn't matter. Too much insulin means your cells are starting to shut down. So, type 1 diabetic, if you're having the same dietary issues, which the big thing is that your pancreas doesn't produce insulin, that doesn't mean that you're not eating differently than your family or that you are eating so differently that it caused you to be sick. Um, those same food triggers are happening for you as a type 1 diabetic as they do for a type 2 diabetic. And in that way, this helps that. Will it ever say You no longer have to inject insulin. No, I'm not ever going to make that claim. Will it help you with all of the side effects? Brain fog, fatigue, mood swings, weight gain, acne, skin tags, all joint problems, all of the things that type 1 diabetics suffer with that nobody gives them credit for, and the constant fear therein about their health. Yes, this can help that too. Okay. Short story. It can help that too. All right. So you guys, I do have another call to hop on. I hope this helped a little bit about the heart. So remember, 5 ways this is increasing the insulin resistance is increasing your hypertension. And look, I was on dual therapy. We couldn't get my hypertension under control. They kept cycling me through medications, hoping to find the magic one that was going to reduce my blood pressure. At the time, I didn't understand all of the information I'm talking about, and I was just on along for the ride. Like, um, this is what the doctor said, so this is what I'm going to do. Now my blood pressure is maintained, controlled, and in normal range every day. I have not done a reading in a year and a half that was out of range, meaning below that 130/80. Um, and no medications. I have no prescribed medications in my cabinet at all. The only one medication that's in my cabinet is some NSAID, because I've had 20 broken bones and just as many surgeries. And so my body is riddled with pain more than a normal person. But even at that, I was on 3 medications for pain. Just by getting my insulin resistance under control, all of those areas, the 3 joints that were replaced, all of the broken bones from top to bottom, all of the stuff that's happened. By the way, my thumb was tore off in one accident and had to be put back on. They thought I was going to lose that thumb. Yes, I've had a lot of injury. By the way, injuries, inflammation, increase insulin resistance. The more often you go in for surgeries, you get an increased result in insulin resistance. Oh man. Before I hop off, there's one thing I just triggered and I want to get this out. I saw a video this weekend about a woman who was pregnant and she ended up with long term. She had hormonal problems after her pregnancy. Her doctor said, "Oh, you're just getting used to, your body change as a mom," and she ended up having Hashimoto's. So I want to talk about that a little bit because I think one piece that most people are missing with all of this, is that every woman, when she becomes pregnant, becomes a little bit insulin resistant. Now, if you're already insulin resistant, that's going to be worse, right? If you have any genetic triggers and you become insulin resistant and you're thinking like, oh, I'm pregnant, I'm feeding 2, I can eat all the ice cream and I can eat all the stuff. And now you've pushed that slight amount of insulin resistance into a bigger amount of insulin resistance into gestational diabetes. And it doesn't have to become gestational diabetes, but now you've set your system up for this insulin resistance. Ladies, science has shown there's 6 times more insulin receptors in your breast, the good and bad, more likely, more susceptible to cancer when we're not getting the proper levels of insulin and energy into those cells. But breastfeeding has been shown to get that insulin resistance back under control after pregnancy. Why we're seeing so many pregnant women go from this gestational or pregnancy insulin resistance into full-blown diabetes. Part of it, of course, is our food. Part of it is that breastfeeding has been taken away from many women. Social, like whatever. It's not cool to breastfeed. Breastfeeding is as important for the mom as it is for the child. When you breastfeed after your pregnancy, you're getting your insulin levels and your insulin sensitivity back to normal, and you will have less problems after pregnancy. But now, if you are experiencing fatigue and weight gain and what they're just calling postpartum depression and all of this stuff, maybe it's time to just try this and address some things that could be related to insulin resistance, get those blood sugars under control, get the insulin under control, and see your mood improve, and as well as a number of those other things. Now, it eventually turned into Hashimoto's for her. I've talked about thyroid and Hashimoto's many times. Insulin resistance sets up a system where you're more susceptible to becoming um, inflamed and have an immune deficiency or immune disorder like Hashimoto's. Am I going to tell you this is going to cure Hashimoto's? No. But am I going to tell you that getting that insulin resistance under control, taking care of your health and thereby your baby's health can help you after pregnancy? Yes. Breaks my heart to see these videos where people are talking about it, and it's really so very simple. Address the insulin, address the rest of your health. It's very, very simple. And I always love to say that insulin is like the elephant in the room. Clear that elephant out. And now, if there's anything left over, your doctor has an easier time figuring that out. But you got to clear the room for them. You don't leave your house full of boxes and junk and then have a cleaner come to clean for you weekly. It always used to amaze me that my sister-in-law would clean her house before her cleaner came, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" Because she wanted the cleaner to focus on the deep clean and not the little stuff, right? Well, that's what we need to do for our bodies. We need to get rid of the big stuff in our health by addressing insulin resistance and let our doctors go in and do the deep clean where there's really a problem and not just something that's masked by insulin resistance. We'll see you guys tomorrow. If you guys have suggestions or anything you want me to talk about, let me know and I will do a more deep dive on those things. Again, I want to close out by saying, look, I appreciate you all. I love you all. I'm so thankful for the opportunity to be here and talk to you, but I do not want to represent myself as if I'm some kind of doctor or scientist. I'm not. I'm a real person who suffered, like many of you are, stumbled on something when no one else could help me, and it actually really helped. Does baking soda help? I've done baking soda before. There's a whole thing about the acidic and pH and all of that, right? You guys, the truth is, your stomach is a very acidic environment. It would take a lot to change that environment. Um, I'm not an expert on baking soda, so it's not really. I've tried it, I didn't did I really see any results? No, and I've done a lot of stuff, you guys, in the quest to get my health back. This protocol, 2 teas, 1 fiber, is all that I had to do to change all of that and not have look, I'm the spreadsheet queen, Celtic kings. I am the spreadsheet queen, and so I have spreadsheets for everything. There was a time when I had this spreadsheet posted on my fridge because it had times of all of the stuff that I was supposed to be taking in a day to try and get my health managed based on information like from the medical medium and all of these other people. And I wasn't getting better. This, this simple 3 packets in the end, after I did all the crazy stuff, this is what changed my health. And that's why I'm here talking about it. All right. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Good morning, Lori. Um, and thanks for joining me. I hope it helped. Ask me whatever questions you want. I'm going to run. We'll talk to you later.